begin my interest in criminal neurology and the fact that when people say they were born this way, so what if people were inherently violent or predisposed to crime? Then I decided to further expand and say, if you delved into whether or not the criminals are genetic or biological, and I wondered how psychologists who work with law enforcement and perhaps to help these people who are otherwise stuck with living with these choices or seem to have to meet and are unable to control these violent urges. So the process, I felt the dire need to, I felt the dire need to investigate this topic because if a large factor contributing to being a criminal was genetic or biological, then we could assuage them from going down that path, from going into that lifestyle of committing crimes. And should we be able to detect this in people, then we could go on to tackle the situation and thus increase the likelihood of preventing a handful of crimes. And I'm not saying that all children with these biological and genetic traits will go down this path, but if they were, so it would be wise if we could nurture them appropriately, and we will most probably be able to prevent them from going down that path. So the process of my research, when I first began ID 497, I wanted to discuss the traits of certain criminals, factors contributing to those traits, and although they had these traits, it doesn't mean that they would go down those paths. And however, they were more susceptible to those criminal activities. This is where nurture comes into play, and whether it is the catalyst that precipitates individuals with the aforementioned traits to act out lawlessly. So I came up with this title first: Behavior Analysis Through Psychology. Can being a criminal be determined by one's genetic and biological makeup, and how much does the nurture factor add to it? And as I previously stated how I started off, the idea still stood by the end of the course. However, I felt that my research was definitely more concise than how I began in terms of what I answered. I even changed my title by the end of 497 and began more specific about what I wanted to research about. And I hope that what I researched about would be useful information to experts in the field that may consider looking into this as well. So by the end of 497, I figured my research question was extremely broad with spectrums of questions within a question, so I changed the title to Criminal Behavioral Analysis Through Psychology: Detect, Tackle, and Prevent. I was certain that towards the end of my research, I would change the title again, but at this point, this was the most concise I could make it. And then at the beginning of this semester, since there was substantial proof that criminality can be caused by certain genes and certain aspects of biological makeup of a person, I wanted to explore the possibility of doing a full screening of babies at birth, a neurological screening and a genetic screening to detect predispositions to violence. And from there, perhaps parents could work with psychologists to figure out what types of environments or situations to avoid in order to suppress violent behaviors and deter children from going down that path. So by the end of, so at this point, perhaps I figured out there were perhaps too many risks involved in screening a baby or a child too early on in their age, and so perhaps in the future we could come up with certain ways to screen them, or institutions possibly, but yet again it's a project to be worked on. So my final title is now Criminal Behavioral Analysis and Crime Prevention. The obstacles that I went through with my capstone was that every time that I asked a question, it seemed like there were a million questions that followed. The topics I wanted to cover were so broad, and people had doubts as to whether criminality was really genetic and whether it had its biological factors, even professors. And all these daunting information coupled with the doubts from the people made me procrastinate out of fear. And how I overcame all those obstacles was graduation. I'm an international student, so I have to graduate this semester. And I made it a point to meet with my professor multiple times throughout this semester instead of avoiding him out of fear like last semester. And also because I was trying harder to piece the puzzle together so the final picture became clearer. Okay, so this is the limbic system, a system of the brain structures including the thalamus, hippocampus, amygdala, hypothalamus, and the olfactory bulb. And this system is primarily involved with regulating behaviors having to do with motivation and emotion. On average, this is the difference between the brain of a psychopath and the normal brain. On average, in the brain of a psychopath, there's an 18% reduction in the volume of the brain's middle frontal gyrus and a 9% reduction in the volume of the orbital frontal gyrus. And there's also deformations in the amygdala, which is the part of the brain which considers emotions, and therefore it attests to the fact that psychopaths lack emotion. Psychopaths showing a thinning in the outer layer of the region called the cortex, and many of these brain differences can be measured early on in life, long before a person might develop into an actual psychopath or commit a crime. Criminologist Natalie Fontaine of Indiana University studies the tendency towards being callous and unemotional in children between the ages of 7 and 12, and children with these traits have been shown to have a higher risk of being psychopaths as adults. So they know the difference between right and wrong, but they lack the feeling of what is wrong. So when confronted with moral dilemmas, most people get worried and have emotions to help form judgment, and an experiment looking at the brain activity during ethical conundrums found that in the amygdala, the brain region critical to fear response and emotion is not as active in psychopaths as it is in regular people when they are faced with moral dilemmas. Psychopaths answer those questions. They don't differ from normal people, but their brains don't show the same response as normal people, and they aren't able to empathize because they cannot process the emotions of others, and facial expressions are an enigma to them, especially in distress, especially emotions of distress and negative emotions. And that's why I included questions 4 and 5 in my survey. So the criminal mind. Parts of the brain are deformed. So your brain, all parts of your brain work together to make you complete, functioning human being, but for many criminals, some of these parts aren't the same size as it is in the average person, causing them to act differently. Studies have found that 2 parts of the brain, the frontal lobe, are significantly smaller in people with antisocial personality disorder, and they have the tendency to therefore act out violently and be repeat offenders. A tumor could also be to blame. It's not in all criminals, and it's not an excuse for all criminals, but it is a factor. And for example, in this situation, Charles Whitman, he killed 16 people in the University of Texas in 1996 before being killed by the police. Prior to that, he had expressed terrible headaches and irrational thoughts. And he wrote in his suicide note before killing his wife and his mother and before going on that rampage that he had wanted his body to be used, like an autopsy to be performed on his body to see if there was something in his brain causing him to act that way. And the doctor did find something. It's called glioblastoma tumor, and that affected his actions. The chemical levels in the brains are off in psychopaths. The neurotransmitters in our brains deliver signals and cause reactions to us. So some criminal brains have different levels of those neurotransmitters, and for example, serotonin. At appropriate levels, it keeps us from acting out aggressively. But these levels are a lot lower in psychopaths, so they react impulsively and violently. And another one is dopamine, which levels affect a person's feelings of reward for an action. So if the dopamine level increases when they commit a crime, they feel good, and so they'll do it again. Like I said before, their brain cannot respond to facial expressions. So people with antisocial personality disorder have trouble recognizing faces showing fear and sadness, and they fall into the category of a psychopath. It's significantly more difficult to know when an expression is sad, and they have no reaction to expressions of fear. Basically, those areas of their brain don't fire up the way our brains do. And this difference may be what keeps psychopaths from feeling remorse, because they don't register that they are causing pain or sadness. And that is why I included the questions 13 and 14 in my survey. They are also fearless. The brain of the psychopath does not react with fear as frequently as ours do. They lack the fear conditioning that causes the rest of us to be afraid when we know something bad is about to come up. And the average person can be conditioned like Pavlov's dog. When they hear a certain sound, they react knowing that something fearful is coming up. As the brain starts to associate the tune with so if you hear a sound, you would get electrical shock. But when psychopath brains, they know that it's coming up, but their brains don't show their fear, knowing that it's coming up. The lack of anxiety over the future and consequences of their actions can make psychopaths very dangerous criminals. The warning signs start as early as the age of 3. When researchers tested the reactions of a large group of 3-year-olds, they expected some sort of reaction when they expected an unpleasant noise coming up. About 8% of these children did not have any reactions, and when they did a follow-up on these children 20 years later, they had criminal records ranging in severity from violent or serious driving infractions. And that doesn't mean, again, that all children whose brains register fear who don't register fear the same as others will be criminals, but it does indicate that they are more likely to act criminally, and steps should be taken to raise them in a way that helps them stay out of trouble. The rational and irrational sides communicate too much. So the corpus callosum is the bridge between the right side of your brain and the left side of your brain. And in criminal psychopaths, those bundles of fibers are much longer and thinner, so it causes the irrational brain and the rational brain to communicate way too much. And you might think this is a good thing, but it's not, because then they cannot, it leads to impulsive behavior because they have a difficulty of thinking through the consequences of their actions rationally. A genetic predisposition. A large number of murderers were raised in a relatively conflict household, so if the deficits in their brain were a trait they were born with, it gave them a higher likelihood of becoming violent criminals. And that's not to say they were forced into crime, but their brains were more inclined to them than the brains of an average human. It also explains why criminals from loving, wealthy upbringings can also commit horrible and violent crimes. Their brains are also not fully developed. Teenagers can be tried in the U.S. For the most part as adults. However, reasoning and judgment is not matured in a person until late teens or early 20s. So compared to adults, teenagers are more impulsive and more prone to peer pressure, so they won't think of the consequences of their actions, and they're unlikely able to find a way out of bad situations. And also the aggression peaks at the teenagers, but they can actually grow out of it, so it's not. So teenagers shouldn't be put in for life because they have a higher chance of being able to change. Mothers who smoke when they're pregnant harm their baby's brains in ways that make them more likely to become a criminal. 31% more likely to be arrested at some point if their mother smoked when they were pregnant. And those with heavy smoker moms are more likely to be repeat offenders as well. Nicotine causes abnormalities in the development of attention and impulse control of the brain. And this holds both for men and women. How biological predispositions can be used in court. Is it morally right to use this as an excuse? For an example I'm using today is a man called Herbert Weinstein who had killed his wife. To use as evidence in court, they used brain scans subsequently revealed a large cyst in the frontal cortex of his brain, showing that the cognitive abilities were significantly compromised. And these scans were used to strike a plea bargain, which reduced his sentence to just 11 years for killing his wife. Nurture. The environment in which the subjects grew up in and the nurture received would be the biggest contributors to research. One of the factors could be low income versus high income, the second, blended families versus nuclear families, and the third one, healthy family relationships versus abusive family relationships. Children who witnessed the incarceration of their parents, including in the survey question number 7. This is just a small statistic of a larger issue. Here we see the statistics of African American children who had fathers who didn't complete high school. They have a 50% chance of being incarcerated. And children like these are more likely to be exposed to ineffectual parenting behaviors, child abuse, and parental substance abuse. They show higher rates of problem behaviors, including delinquency, psychological maladjustment, and cognitive deficits. However, other studies have also shown that some children don't show detriments in social or emotional functioning. Studies also show that children with incarcerated mothers were more likely to repeat a grade or be slower or show differences in their scores in standardized reading or math exams. For the second part, abusive and broken families, it's the absence of rewarding relationships at home or at school that causes them to start looking for attention and acceptance from some type of source. Survey questions 1 through 3 and 6 through 10. Should there be a trend of negative environmental factors contributing towards a life of crime and violence? Perhaps children with such genetic and biological predispositions should be put under observation and specific environments that does not trigger antisocial behavior, even if it means being away from their families, if those families are a negative contributing factor. And from this we can see that socially unkosher environments can be very well a catalyst for disaster when it comes to in contact with persons who possess the predispositions to crime. So nurture is a very big contributing factor in this case. The McDonald triad, aka the triad of psychopathy. So there are 3 behavioral characteristics contributing to this triad: urinosis, which is bedwetting, fire starting, and animal torture. If these traits persist past the age of 5, it is most likely that these children will become sociopaths. And further studies have suggested that these behaviors are often the product of parental neglect, cruelty, or trauma, and that such events in a person's childhood can result in homicidal proneness. There's a video.
Why don't we turn these cameras off? I'll get him to tell us what you miss.
Didn't work.
You sure about that?
Yeah, he was probably abused by one or both of his parents. He's learned to take the pain. You grew up in a house that looked normal and happy, didn't you, Vincent?
Did I?
But your father beat you every chance he got.
Smacking you around some, didn't everybody's own that? Well, maybe if you were his dad, you would have learned to fight.
You learned to take the beatings, the abuse. You learned to smile. But in the back of your mind, you probably thought, one day when I'm big enough. So you were bullied and abused, and you became an abuser and a bully. It's a logical progression.
Really?
Yeah. Your father beat your mother too, didn't he? Vincent, when you grow up in an environment like that, an extremely abusive, violent household, it's not surprising that some people grow up to become killers.
Some people?
What's that?
You said some people grow up to become killers.
Some people grow up to captain.
The most important point I wanted to take away from that video was when he said paranoid personalities develop in childhood, and you were just responding to what you learned, and he didn't know any way else. And he said, some people, what's that? You said some people grow up to become killers, and other people grow up to catch them. So basically, they do have a choice, ultimately. So it's not, I don't think it should be an excuse for misapplied court. So the differences between psychopaths and sociopaths is that for sociopaths, nurture is a huge factor in indicating their probability to offend. On the other hand, for psychopaths, they'll offend no matter what. For genetics, genes interact with adverse social environments to increase the probability of aggressive and antisocial behavior. For the first one, the MAO gene, which is also known as the worry gene, is present in the X chromosome, and it's shown that children with the variant gene lacking MAO, when they are abused, it often leads them to succumb to antisocial behavior as adults. And this gene is apparent in the DNA of the Chinese, the African, and the Polynesian samples. Antisocial personality disorders is marked by a general pattern of disregard for violation of other people's rights, and it causes psychopaths to be susceptible to violent behavior from women. Women do not commit close to even a quarter of the amount of crimes that men commit. Because the mother's role played in the survival of a child is so key that women have less to gain and more to lose when they engage in this behavior. Females also feel more fear easily compared to men. And in a survey done in 2001 using a nationally representative sample of young adults aged 18 to 28, it was found that women were more likely to instigate non-reciprocal violence than men were. It also showed that they committed more murders and less sexual assaults, and when they, in terms of property, they were more involved in larceny theft as compared to motor vehicle theft in comparison to men. And with drugs, they were more likely to be associated with than to actually possess the drugs. What I learned from the process was that it was very, very tedious. But completing it was very exhilarating, and there's so many more facets of my research that I can go on to explore. And it does not mean, so basically to recap what we've learned today, it does not mean that if they possess these traits that they will fall into a life of crime. And external factors like a smoking mother or a child growing up in an aggressive environment is basically how a child was nurtured. So that is a large contributor to that. And the questions that persist from my research is that since children spend most of their time in school, and most of the impressionable years of their life in school, I think it was germane that the environment would be a positive and nurturing one, and not one that perhaps would practically shove them down a path of crime. So I was thinking of perhaps a special school or a daycare perhaps, where they would spend their time in a positively nurturing environment. And then, is there an ethical issue faced when thinking of screening children at an early age? Would it be detrimental to their health? And then neurological scans and blood tests. And at what age should it be permissible, as we do not want to endanger the child? And is it justice if these traits are used in court to lower the sentence of criminals? So these are my works cited. Thank you very much.
Well, I have read a lot of this done. Okay.
Thank you.
You showed a whole lot of incredible research and information there.
Thank you.
I'm a listener.
You're gonna make me cry.
Well, it brought it so to the forefront. We have a very dear friend my age locally who is, their children are grown, and
Yeah.
they've started taking in foster children.
Mm-hmm.
And they had two little girls for almost a year this last year who were 4 and 6 or 7. And then by the time they let this loving, caring, nurturing environment, one of the girls almost was incapable, it seems like, of showing or expressing love, pain, fear, acceptance.
Yeah.
It's just a whatever.
Mhm.
And she's 5 years old. And I just wonder, I look at this and I just think, can that ever be changed if in a year of nurturance with both parents incarcerated? Just for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I went into this, because I knew it was much more than, just wanting to commit crime.
That substitute this child's name, the
Exactly.
talk, and,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, how's everybody doing? My name is Brandon Lim, and I'm going to be presenting my project, which is alternative methods for symptom reduction in patients with paroxysmal kinesogenic dyskinesia. So I'm a biomedical sciences major, so I have a lot of interest in a lot of different science topics, but specifically with paroxysmal kinesogenic dyskinesia, I had a friend who was affected by this, so I was able to witness firsthand the struggles he goes through daily life experiencing this movement disorder. There are simple things like going to play basketball, which he couldn't do with ease. Even just getting up from a chair, we had to delay and wait for him for 5 minutes because he would have certain attacks affected by this disorder. What I wanted to focus on was the ideals and methods of Western medicine versus alternative methods, and specifically traditional Chinese medicine for patients that are affected by paroxysmal kinesogenic dyskinesia. It's important to understand this topic because in the modern age, you want to know what the best application of medicine is. Oftentimes there's things like prescription medication that can have a lot of negative side effects, so you might want to look for alternative methods in order to cure your symptoms or the disorder or disease that you're affected by. So prior to my research, I hypothesized that if patients use traditional Chinese medicine instead of Western medicine, specifically against prescription medication, they'll benefit more in their long-term health. So a little background on paroxysmal kinesogenic dyskinesia. It's a movement disorder. It's characterized by episodes of abnormal movement that range from mild to severe, and I'll explain a little bit more of what these symptoms entail. It affects about 1 in every 150,000 individuals, so it's not a super common disorder, but it does still appear. And for unknown reasons, it does affect males at a greater scale than females. Another thing to note is there's a neurological basis. So although it is a movement disorder, there's a part of your brain called the basal ganglia, which controls the motor movements, and it's different activities in this part of the brain in patients affected by PKD that really induces these attacks. There's also a genetic component to this disorder. There's a gene called proline-rich transmembrane 2, and this gene codes for development of proteins. They do not know exactly what the function of these proteins are, but this is the gene, the mutation in this specific gene is what causes proximal kinesogenic dyskinesia. There's also autosomal dominant inheritance, meaning you only need a gene from one parent to obtain this disorder. You don't need both genes from both parents. You only need the one gene. Some of the symptoms of PKD, there are episodes of irregular jerking or shaking. These attacks, they're triggered by sudden movement. So as I explained to my friend, if he tried to get up too quickly from bed or too quickly from a chair, he would experience these seizure-like attacks, which are characterized by muscle contractions, and they're very similar to muscle cramps. So if anybody has experienced muscle cramps, it's almost like a more intense version of this. It can affect both sides or one side of the body. So for example, in my friend, both of his legs were affected, but there have been cases where all 4 limbs are affected and they have seizure-like attacks in their entire body. Patients are conscious during their attacks, so they're very aware of what's going on. They never pass out, and there have always been cases where they're conscious and aware of what's going on. And these attacks are followed by a term called aura, and aura is described as a tingling sensation. And the best way to describe this is you've experienced your foot falling asleep or your arm falling asleep. It's that same tingling sensation that you feel throughout your muscles, and this is what precedes the attacks. So each one of these attacks, they could last up to 5 minutes in time. Sometimes they're only 30 seconds, but it varies from patient to patient depending on how severely they're affected by the disorder. And frequency, there's a big range, so the attacks can happen once a month or even 100 times a day. So as you can imagine, when it happens up to 100 times a day, it can be very stressful on the body, not just physically, but also mentally. It could be very stressful just to go through daily life of that specific individual. These symptoms, they appear during childhood. There haven't been very many cases where symptoms have showed up in infancy. They generally occur during childhood, and diagnosis usually doesn't occur till later because it could even occur up until adolescence. They'll show no symptoms until their teenage years. So the only current treatment right now are prescription drugs, specifically anticonvulsants. And what anticonvulsants are is they're prescription medication that are used for patients affected by epileptic seizures. And how they function is they suppress excessive firing of neurons. So during seizures, you have too much neuron activity, and that's what causes you to have kind of muscle spasm type attacks. And these symptoms are very similar to the attacks of proximal kinesiogenic dyskinesia, because you do have seizure-like symptoms. Sometimes you can drop to the floor and you have no control over your body. So I looked into Western medicine and the types of cures and treatments there are for proximal kinesiogenic dyskinesia. Some ideals that are important to know about Western medicine is they focus on curing pain and providing comfort, generally in the short term. So I'm sure everybody's taking Advil or Tylenol to cure the pain that they're feeling in the moment. And that's a big focus of Western medicine. Even invasive surgery, just fixing the problem at the spot. And a lot of prescription medication is used. So the pros, it rids the pain quickly, fast and easy comfort, and Western medicine can save lives in the moment when they're looking in the short term. But I found a lot of the cons, especially when using prescription medication. There are a lot of negative long-term effects. So everybody's seen those commercials where they have benefits for a specific type of medicine, and then at the end there'll be a long disclaimer about side effects causing degradation of the liver, kidney, and I'm sure everyone's heard even disclaimers say possible cause of death or heart attack using a specific type of medication. So there are a lot of long-term negative effects on health when using prescription medication. So the alternative method that I looked into was Chinese medicine. And traditional Chinese medicine really focuses on long-term health and stability and balance and flow of patients. And there's a concept called qi in traditional Chinese medicine. And what qi is, it's a vital flow of energy through the body, and it has a lot of functions in maintaining health in the body. They use practices such as acupuncture, tuinai, which is a type of Chinese therapeutic massage, dietary methods, herbal medicines, and Tai Chi, which is traditional Chinese medicine. And Tai Chi is actually seen in a lot of different forms of modern day exercise, such as yoga and Pilates. So the pro of traditional Chinese medicine is it has been proven to provide longevity and health, oftentimes even increasing the lifespan of different individuals. But the big con is you do not get pain reduced immediately, so results tend to be seen more in the long term versus the short term. And also because it is not a widely used type of medicine these days, practices aren't as regulated specifically by the government, so things such as herbal medicines aren't regulated by the Federal Drug Administration and are often just given out with free rein. So what I found was Western medicine has shown to reduce the symptoms in PKD, specifically using the drugs that are prescribed. And as I mentioned before, these specific prescription drugs are anticonvulsants. There hasn't been a 100% cure for the symptoms, and there's no surgery that has been used for PKD. So the only thing used are prescription drugs, but what I found, there's a lot of side effects to these anticonvulsants that are used. They have known to cause liver, kidney damage in the long run. They cause dizziness, fatigue, nausea, and weight gain. And the main thing I was focusing on was to provide long-term comfort for patients with paroxysmal kinesogenic dyskinesia. And when you're taking this type of medication, when you're experiencing this dizziness, fatigue, and nausea, this is the last thing you want to experience, especially if you're a working individual. If you're always feeling dizzy, you're always tired at work, it makes it very difficult to live your daily life. So what I was trying to look for is a way to steer away from medications and to maybe even completely get yourself off of prescription medications by finding these different alternative methods, like traditional Chinese methods. And what I found was Tai Chi, which is the Chinese version of exercise. It helps balance and stability in individuals, specifically with Parkinson's disease. It has been proven to help the balance and stability with these patients, and also reduces knee pain and promotes quality of life and mood. You may wonder why it is important to reduce the knee pain. As I said, patients do sometimes have 90 to 100 attacks per day, and this could be very stressful on the body, so having constant muscle contractions puts a lot of stress on the joints. So by practicing Tai Chi and reducing the knee pain, it can really help reduce the symptoms of these individuals. And also, another thing I mentioned, so paroxysmal kinesogenic dyskinesia has a big neurological basis, and these seizure-like attacks often are noted by excessive firing of the neurons. And what I found interesting is Qi and neuron have a lot of very similar concepts. So as I said, Qi is the energy that flows through the body. It connects the body and the mind. And neurons, on a physiological basis, have a very similar, it has a very similar way of working in the body. It connects your functions in the brain to your motor functions in the rest of your physical body. So in a sense, you could say neurons are a more developed version of the Qi that Chinese developed 2,500 years ago. So in conclusion, I found that Western medicine, obviously you cannot completely discount it. There have been many technological advances that have helped improve the health of patients. And even prescription meds can be useful sometimes, but there are a lot of side effects with prescription medication. And this is something generally you don't want to rely on, because in the long term it may cut your life short, or you may have problems at earlier ages when you're relying on this prescription medication too early. So I found it is better to rely on traditional Chinese medicine. You do have to have a lot of patience to pursue this type of medicine, because you do not see results immediately, and the pain tends to linger around for a longer time, but in the long term, you do become a healthier individual, and you have a lot more longevity in your life, so it can increase your lifespan, and you will have a healthier body up until death. Another important thing that I wanted to note is, as I was comparing Qi and neurons, I realized it's important to take benefits from both types of medicine and take the pros from traditional Chinese medicine and Western medicine. So when you are practicing traditional Chinese medicine, it's important to look at it through a modern day perspective of Western medicine, because there are a lot of technological advancements that have helped improve health. But specifically, staying away from prescription drugs is a very important factor because of all the negative side effects that it entails. Any questions?
I've got a couple. In a way, these go back to some of your ideas. Have there done any, is there any statistical study of how Tai Chi got to be given?
Yeah, so there is a specific study that they did with Parkinson's disease, and they took patients for, I think it was a 5-year period, where they had them practice Tai Chi at a consistent basis. And over the 5 years, they saw the symptoms reduced. So Parkinson's symptoms, there's such things like tremors and shaking that are uncontrollable. And they did find that patients were able to control their motor movements. for these
Right, with
factors.
Parkinson's, not PKD that they were investigating.
Not PKD specifically, but there are a lot of similar symptoms with PKD.
And that was my other question. Do you have anything about sort of how Parkinson's works compared to how PKD works?
So Parkinson's is a little more neurologically based, but the motor functions are very similar. So some symptoms for Parkinson's is you got tremors and shakings, and you do lose autonomic movements, which are things such as blinking, your automatic smile throughout the day, and even things such as moving your arms as you're walking along. Those functions become slowly non-existent. So these motor functions are very similar to Parkinson's disease, where you don't have complete control over your motor functions, and these seizure-like attacks cause you to lose control over your body.
That strikes me as being the aspect that needs more investigation.
Yeah.
They really, they look the same, but they really?
Yeah, it's PKD. It's only been around for a few decades now, so there's not a whole lot of research on it so far. So, point of my research was to find a lot of similar disorders and translate it to proximal musculoskeletal disease. Yeah.
With the Tai Chi, since Parkinson's is so often the symptoms develop later in life, 50s, 60s, 70s, not so often in childhood. But PDK, did I say that the right direction? PKD, as you said, develops in childhood and adolescence. I've never known a child to go to a Tai Chi class. I mean, that is so unusual because usually, you drive along even down to Sail Del Mar, and they're all, older people in the classes outside of the Tai Chi classes in the front. Is there anything in this area that is suggesting that children should be in classes so that it would benefit them?
What's important to understand too, as I said, you want to look at these traditional Chinese methods through a Western day perspective as well. So it's not maybe specifically Tai Chi that has benefits. So there's things, as I mentioned, like yoga and Pilates that also have a lot of the similar ideals about balance and stability. So even these type of exercises would be beneficial to these children and younger adolescents to practice to help relieve these symptoms.
I remember in your written report, you talked about that they have discovered, you mentioned it yourself, a genetic basis for PKD. Can that be compared to the genetic basis for Parkinson's? Is there a genetic basis for Parkinson's?
Well, they are both autosomal dominant in parenting, so both parents do not have to have the disorder or affected by the disorder for the genes to be passed on. You can get only one gene from one parent, and it can still be obtained that way. But in terms of a specific gene, they are totally different genes that are being affected when the genes are being mutated and these symptoms are occurring.
Actually, probably this is the bit that kind of sticks in my head, that the symptoms are the same, but maybe they're quite different.
Yeah, well, think of, a lot with genetics. There are so many different genes in the human genome, and a lot of them do have similar functions. So when you are looking for an ultimate cure for Parkinson's or proximal musculoskeletal dyskinesia, you are going to be targeting completely different genes, but when you are curing the symptoms themselves, then you are looking for similar methods to help reduce the symptoms.
As a result of this project, are you finding that you're interested in going to the medical world as a practitioner or as a researcher?
I do want to go in as a practitioner, ideally, but at the same time, as a practitioner, it wouldn't stop me from continuing to do research and finding more about topics that I'm interested in.
And do you think you'll go into Western medicine or into Eastern medicine or Western with a heavy focus on alternate methods?
Obviously, in society today, it's very heavily emphasized with Western medicine, But with saying that, although I will be practicing Western medicine, I do want to take a lot of ideals from traditional Chinese medicine, even other alternative methods, not just specifically traditional Chinese medicine, and try and take the benefits from all types and create almost like maybe my own type of practice that would help reduce all the negatives of.
I think there are more Western doctors who are referring patients to acupuncture as pain relief than I've ever heard.
Yeah.
20
So
years ago.
it is a pretty common occurrence for it to happen. They do rely on both practices. So this research was not to negate one type of medicine or the other. It's to really focus on the benefits of both
Right.
and try and create the best type of practice ultimately.
Nice. We'll all be one to you one of these days.
Okay, any other questions?
I'm Robinson, and my topic is being released from prison or any institution and going back into society. So why re-entry? That's what the process is, going back to society from prison or any institution. Before I tell you why I chose it, I want to let you know what it is. So it's any person being released from any institution, prison, jail, going back to society, back to the regular population. Successful reentry is the end part of that, being able to re-enter back into society as you were before, or better than before, because before you were in prison, you were a criminal. That's why you got to prison. So hopefully, successful re-entry allows you to get a job, have somewhere to live, not do that criminal activity, and be a working part of society. And who experiences re-entry? That's any person inside those institutions that's not able to do everything on a daily basis, not able to go to work, not able to get a job, not able to see their family because people are holding that back from them. And who can help develop successful re-entry? That's going to be anybody around you in those institutions or prison systems, programs. Your family can help you develop successfully to re-enter back into society. It's all about who is there around you to help you, because it is a struggle and it's an individualized struggle. There's so many people doing it and it's different for everybody. And like I said, it's difficult for most. I would say all, but some people do have a great support system. I would say it's difficult for most. I hypothesize that it's difficult for most because of the policies we have in play, the actual prison system, what goes on inside the prison system, and prison system, and our laws. Everything it holds you back from coming from prison and going back to society and being normal. It's right there. That's what we're aiming for. Okay, and so I chose re-entry because there is a major need for research. These numbers right here are people being released from prison. This is just some of it. These go by state, and this is just for 2016 by month. So January, February, March, just for Arizona, 98 people got released from prison in only January. In the next month, 108 people got released. And so this goes by state. There's 51 states, and so hundreds and hundreds of people are being released every month all across the United States, and it's just not the United States. Every country has prison. So it's all around the world. So just our federal prisons, there's almost 200,000 inmates just in federal prison. And this is some statistics of the age group. Mostly, it's 35,000 people. There's how many? About almost 100,000 people between the ages of 30 and 50. That's ridiculous. Like, that's our mothers, that's our uncle, our grandpa. This is everybody in federal prison, women, children, everybody. So my methods, how I went about my research, I used Marymount, California University's library, online library, and I researched journal articles that had a lot of case studies where they interviewed people who were recently released from jail interviewed people who were in jail to see how their in-prison circumstances were affecting them on the inside, and when they got released, there was a lot of longitudinal studies to do the follow-up to see how prison affects them once they get released. And there's a lot of people who go through what is called recidivism. And that term is basically once you have been to jail, committing another crime, once you've been released, going back to jail. And so there was a lot of people to interview who have been released from jail. I can interview you, and then I'm going to interview you in jail, and then they were once again released. So they have to go through this process multiple times, make a year or in their lifetime, and it doesn't get easier. They still need the same help, and it's not always there. Most of the time, it's not there at all. I had one interview. I have a cousin who was recently released from jail a few months ago, and I had the chance to interview him. He's doing really well, not as good as he can be, but he has a great support system. And I also used my comparative criminal justice course ball from a class I've taken because it helped me see how the criminal justice field holds people back from being a part of society. The laws that we have in place and the policy for the prison system, it's holding people back from getting past the prison system. So once you go to prison, your whole life is prison. And these are some key terms I used to look up, to find these journal articles and case studies. Successful reentry after prison. So I think this successful reentry after prison was a great key term to look up because the successful reentry is really hard. Everyone goes through reentry, but to be successful is the part that you want. So that was really hard. And my results. So what I found is that, so my hypothesis was that policies, laws, society, and all these things that we have around us affects reentry, and I did find that your in-prison circumstances, the day you get released, immediate prison release matters. So for the in-prison circumstances, especially like housing, you're in a cell with multiple people, multiple criminals, you can go to prison for a year, but you'll be in the same cell with somebody who's in jail for life. And it's different home training, it's a different life, it's a different culture. You grow up in jail, and it shapes you. In your immediate prison release, the day you get released from prison, my research shows that most jails, I'm gonna say 95% of jails give you nothing the day you release. They just send you out on your own. No money, no train ticket, nowhere to go. No, you can't call. What if you don't have any family? I showed you like my statistics. Most people in jail are between the ages of 30 and 50. So when they get released, they're gonna be in their 70s, who knows? And so the day they get released, who are they gonna call to come pick them up? Where are they gonna go? They don't have any family, so they might resort back to their old ways, their criminal activity. Employment plays the biggest part, is what I found in successful reentry, because you need a job to stay out of the criminal life that you once had. And being able to get a job, the policies that we have in play, getting a job after prison is almost impossible. You have to check whether you have a misdemeanor or a felon. And once you have checked if you have a felon, most likely you're not going to get hired at even the most minimum wage job at McDonald's. They're probably not going to hire you if you've been a thief. If you've been to prison, they don't want to trust you with their customers. They don't want to trust you at all. So it's really hard to get a job once you've been in prison, but it's society's job to give you that chance again, because how are you going to integrate back with us if we won't allow you to. My results also found, so like recidivism, like I said, trying not to go back to jail is really hard for most people, because once you come out of jail, and so in jail, say your family doesn't talk to you, you don't have those family connections that you need. So when you get out of jail, you're just gonna go back to your street family or your criminal family, and they're gonna say, well, you can't get a job like that you need, then let's do this criminal activity like how we were doing before, and to get the money, shelter, and stability like you need. All these results are needed for a successful reentry. If you don't have this, it's really, really hard. especially shelter and stability. Like if you don't have anybody to help you out, if you don't have anybody to come to your aid, to come visit you in jail, just to let you know that they're there for you when you get out, or to have a couch to sleep on. It's really hard to be able to say, oh, I'm a part of this community once again. Oh, they want me here, and all that stuff. So prison, I found that prison release programs play a big part in successful reentry. Our prison systems were put here to rehabilitate people and tear them away from doing these criminal activities. So release programs are supposed to get you ready for the society, for regular society once again. They're not supposed to, prison was not meant to house these inmates for life. Even though that's what most people get, especially murder. We have some really big criminals out there, they get life, but it's not supposed to be for life. So release programs are really needed, they're really helpful. They help you be able to talk to regular people, communicate, have those skills that you need just to be able to be a part of society. Vocational programs, like work programs inside the prison system is needed, because once you get out of jail, like I said, it's hard to even get a job, but to be able to show that you can do the skills for those jobs, then maybe someone will give you a chance to get hired. But if you don't even have those skills because you've been in prison your whole life, then what are you gonna do, you know? So prison needs those programs to teach these inmates those skills to be released, and so they can do their jobs. And prison really has a big effect on health. My research shows that there's a direct correlation between prison and health, and especially a longer prison sentence to health. There's many diseases lingering around prison floors. I watched a documentary in my criminal administration of justice class, and the guards in the prison, they cover their whole bodies, their feet, even their clothes. There was one officer who said he doesn't even put his clothes in his car, like directly in his car. He undresses, puts his stuff in a big old bag, and then set it in his trunk carefully, because he cleans up blood, feces. There's all types of stuff on the floor everywhere that you're just walking through, and the inmates don't have the protective stuff for that, but the guards luckily do. But the inmates are the people we need to protect as well. So prison plays a big part on your health in society. Like I said, employment is a big part of successful reentry, and this is the society, the policy affecting that gainful employment. Like I said, you need to go through all types of screening. You need to disclose that you were in prison instead of, you don't want to hide it anyways, but if you could, you can't. You have to let it be known. Social standards, acceptance, being accepted back into society is really hard. People don't want to, because there's a stigma connected to prison. That once you've been there, you're a criminal. There's no going back from that. Once you're a prisoner, you're always a prisoner, and you'll probably do that criminal activity again. There's no trust there once you've been to prison. Okay, so some limitations of my research. I had some really small research populations. I used all journal articles, so it's really a literature review, and most of my journal articles had small research populations, like of 18 sample sizes of groups that they went and found at halfway homes and stuff like that for released prisoners. And I found a lot of research, but just not recent research. Like much of it came from after 2000, like between 2001 and 10. So nothing in like the last 5-6 years, but it was there. And some questions that my research caused me to think about is, are policymakers making changes to the prison system based upon research? If not, then what is the research for? That's my opinion. The research is here to make change and for the better. And if the policymakers aren't making change based upon research, what are they making those changes based on? Can society be accepting and offer above minimum wage job opportunities to those once convicted of a felony? And that's just, that's broad. Can society change? And that's very individualized. That's very opinionated. I don't think so. As a whole, I don't think so. Is our prison system willing to adhere to the individualized needs of our inmates to ensure successful reentry rates? I would love to do more research on this, to actually do interviews of people in those positions to make those changes, to see if they're even willing to make those changes, because why not? And I think this is my favorite question, because it's very hypothetical. Is the prison system still aimed at its main focus of rehabilitation and deterrence? Obviously not, because the people are getting life sentences. People are here to stay in jail. I think the prison system is aimed at America's focus, which is money. And that's it. Any questions?
Did you find any examples of re-entry programs that work well?
Like specific ones, no, but in my research, like I told you, I used a lot of case studies. They mentioned that the prisons that they were doing research on had release programs, or not all of them though, so like very, very few. Like there was one in Kansas that for sure had a release program, so they were talking about the release programs and the work programs that they provided, but the problem in Kansas was that there wasn't a lot of programs, like there wasn't enough for all the inmates that they had.
Did they describe what they did?
No, not in the release programs. They more so describe what they did in the work programs.
Okay.
Yeah, they're really different. The release programs are supposed to shape you to be able to have those skills to be able to talk to, like, be in the community, get a job, not the vocational skills, but the things you need just in a broad sentence. How to work in society. Especially if you've never been there, there's people who've been in prison since their juvenile days. So you can go straight from the juvenile system to the adult prison, never seeing society. So you don't know how to act in society. So they want to teach you that in prison.
Did you give any thought, there's the famous homeboy industries here in Los Angeles. Would that qualify as
I'm not familiar with that.
well, it's a program that provides jobs for former gang members. Now, I don't know whether they've been specifically
So is it specifically for people who've been in prison or just gang members?
I'm not really sure about that.
That's interesting, because gang members, they're on the road to prison. When you think about it, like they're out here, they're in a gang because they're all doing criminal activity, keeping each other's secrets, and that's their family, and that's, if they go to prison, that's what they're gonna have to come to when they come home. So I hope that sounds like a good program for just gang members too, to teach them how not to act that way while they're out
And
there.
I know that the big principle is to give them work, and
Right, yeah.
it is a sort of a
Right, because they don't even have the skills to get a job. They don't know.
Any other questions?
Back there, in the back?
Ask you real difficult one.
No.
Well, I guess I have a comment, and first of all, like, awesome presentations, and this was really interesting because it is very practical with the populations, and other than homeboys, there are some propositions that were passed that will provide housing, that will provide, the day-to-day things, because like you said, some people have been in there since they were teenagers, and they don't know how to, like, create an email account, or, how to create, manage a smartphone to, like, put in your meetings and things like that. So there are some, policies out there that will help rehabilitate, but you have to be, like, almost like a lottery winner to get even in those things. They are
money makers.
Yes.
But the money makers aren't the ones going to prison.
Yeah.
Well, they are, but like for white collar crimes, they're not in prison like how gang members are. They're going in and out of prison. They're not living their whole lives like that.
Why do you think there's no research for the last couple of years?
I think our government, prison system, they're scared. They don't want to change the prison system. There's millions of people in prison. Between my research, there's a lot on the prison system prison rates going up since the 80s, and how my research shows that the prison system is very, what's the word? I don't want to say, biased toward minorities, blacks and Mexicans, even though there are a lot of Caucasians in prison. You know, it's very biased, so it's just really hard.
Well, they give them a mandatory minimum that we strike rule.
Right, and then there's people still on drug sentences for,
Licenses for expensive
there's a
drugs.
statistic that scared me. It was in 1996. On any given day, 5 to 10 minorities were in jail, like from that city. So on any given day of the whole year, 1996, and in New York in the 80s, a black man was 5 times more likely to get arrested than a white man. And I know it's not as dramatic as that, but it's still bad.
The other thing, going right back, in the very beginning you said something to go back on your very early.
Which one?
Well, I'm not sure if it's even on your slide. You made a remark something like all countries have prison populations.
This is
Yeah.
what I'm told to add total incarcerated.
Right. But I think the United States has a much higher rate.
Oh yeah, of course. Way higher. I would just say like in every country, somebody is experiencing re-entry.
And I'm just beginning to remember also very recently I saw a television program, it might have been 60 Minutes or something like that, about the prison system in Germany, where even murderers have private room with a key.
What?
And they get to go out with family every so often.
No,
Yeah.
murderers. See, our prison system is way different. It's about the aim of the prison system. It's what are they getting out of those inmates? Allowing them to do that, well, is that rehabilitating them? Is that getting them not to be a criminal or murderer anymore? Do they have to have a life sentence to feel like they did wrong or to learn their lesson? So it's just...
Well, and I think there's also studies that say that sort of the general attitude has changed to rehabilitation will never work. It can't happen.
That's what people think.
Exactly.
That's yeah. So, you know, the attitude.
Furloughs, is that like, was it 89, like?
Right, and someone did.
Somebody murdered.
Right.
It's got this program.
Right.
But there's these ones called, what are they next?
Sorry?
Where are they next?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
And I thank you for taking the time out of your day to hear my presentation for my capstone project. I will be earning my BA in Liberal Arts with emphasis in performing arts and business. The title of my, the research for my project reflects the performing arts emphasis of my major. The business emphasis of my major is reflected in the title, which I believe is the solution to my research question. So, what is the question, and why did I want to research it? Does exposure to performing arts enhance the academic success of students from low-income neighborhoods? My research says that the answer to the question is an emphatic yes. Why do children of affluent parents usually perform better in school? Research says it's not just because they may test high in reading and math scores, but because of their additional exposure to music, visual, and performing arts. Children of affluent parents are more likely to attend a Philharmonic concert, visit a museum, or see a staged theatrical production. Children from low-income neighborhoods often do not have the same exposure. Involvement in the arts is associated with gains in math, reading, cognitive ability, critical thinking, and verbal skill. I wanted to focus my research on schools that are located within the Los Angeles Unified School District, but in particular, the schools that are in low-income neighborhoods and attended by underrepresented students. So, the first step in doing my research was to see what does LA Unified School District require as far as performing arts education. The LAUSD states that visual and performing arts is required for pre-K through grade 12. Visual and performing arts includes dance, music, theater, and the visual arts. According to the LAUSD website, the visual and performing arts curriculum should encourage the highest achievement of every student by defining the knowledge, concepts, and skills that students should acquire at each grade level. So now I have established that according to the LAUSD, performing arts is supposed to be taught to students in elementary and secondary schools. But what do the laws have to say about the subject? The Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which was signed into law in 1965 by President Lyndon B. Johnson, was passed to ensure that every child was guaranteed a full education, but it did not specifically discuss performing arts. In the same legislation, federal grants were given to school districts that served low-income students to improve the quality of elementary and secondary education. The Ryan Act was passed in 1970 and eliminated the arts as a requirement for elementary teacher preparation. Then in 2001, the ESEA was renewed as the No Child Left Behind legislation, and visual and performing arts were added as core subjects. Although visual and performing arts was now added back to the curriculum due to the passage of the Ryan Act, elementary teachers were not required to be trained in how to teach it. Once the No Child Left Behind was passed, the federal government gave a standard curriculum for all schools across the nation to use. And the success of a student was reflected by how well students were doing on standardized tests. So there was a strong push for students to pass them. Many schools ended up constantly trying to prepare students for these tests as opposed to giving them a full education, as was the original intent of the legislation. Unfortunately, local school governments could not change the overall program. This resulted in many schools removing visual and performing arts from their curriculum because they thought of these subjects as elective and not budget-friendly. Luckily, that changed with President Obama signing Every Student Succeeds Act on December 10, 2015. The gist of the No Child Left Behind law will remain. Students are still required to take yearly tests in math and reading from 3rd to 8th grade and once in high school. Schools still have to report results of these tests by subgroups such as race, English language proficiency, poverty, and special education. States will still be required to intervene in schools that are not meeting these goals. But the state government, not the federal government, will decide how to ensure every student succeeds. Now, many proponents of beefing up the curriculum to include more visual and performing arts are hopeful that with this modified legislation, the schools will now have more control over how students are educated to succeed in life and no longer design curriculum around standardized tests. So, how is the LAUSD dealing with adding visual and performing arts back into the curriculum without teachers being specifically trained in the arts nor extra funds? Although funds are supposed to be on the way with the recently approved Every Student Succeeds Act. LAUSD is attempting to bring visual and performing arts back to the curriculum by providing training to teachers on arts integration. According to the plan, teachers are trained on how to incorporate the arts into other lessons. Teachers are encouraged to teach integrated lessons, where art is taught alongside a subject like math or English. For example, a physics discussion on the laws of motion could center on a dance move that students practice themselves. Or a piece of 1930s music can be used as text for a social studies lesson. Other methods being used by the LAUSD to return visual and performing arts to the curriculum includes an increase in the number of traveling art teachers. Right now, there are teachers that are trained in the arts, and they go from school to school, and they get to teach a lesson or two that day. The other plan is to modify what some of those traveling art teachers do, that they would become responsible for assisting general teachers in adding art education to the classroom. A new certificate of arts integration will be created and gradually rolled out, and those who receive it will be acknowledged as having a special skill for hiring and pay purposes. Data collection is a major component of this new plan. Data collection has been done by advocates for performing arts, but not by LAUSD. And finally, a creation of a citywide cultural network to tap educational resources at theaters, museums, art galleries, and other creative industries. This is great. The LAUSD is resolving to return visual and performing arts to the curriculum by integrating arts education into regular curriculum. But this does not expose students to the beauty of visual arts, the creativity of acting, nor the joy of dancing and singing just for the heck of it. Nor does it fully immerse the student into the world of theater. Other studies that were focused on young students from the lowest quarter of socioeconomic status showed how these students were affected if they were exposed to high or low levels of arts, in or out of school. This arts engagement included involvement in music, dance, theater, or visual arts. The key findings in one particular study was that students who were exposed to arts education had better academic performance in high school math, planned to earn a bachelor's degree, participated in intramural and interscholastic sports as well as honor societies, chose a major that aligned with a professional career such as accounting, education, nursing, and social sciences, and were more civically engaged, such as they were more likely to read a newspaper at least once a week, volunteer in the community, vote in a national organization. So the research has confirmed that exposing students to visual and performing arts improves the overall academic success of students. So, integrating arts education into the regular curriculum does not give students the opportunity to truly experience the theater, nor does it adequately cover standard areas required by the California Standards for Theater, which is posted on the LA Unified School District website. These standards state how students should be able to have a theater vocabulary, creatively carry out a plan, carry out or plan a theater activity or performance, have historical or cultural experience by viewing through the lens of a particular time and place. That's their words, not mine. Be able to analyze the feelings and thoughts obtained by theatrical experiences and become an effective team player and communicator. The results from various research discussed previously emphatically supports why exposure to arts education in elementary and secondary schools on a regular basis is necessary to ensure a well-rounded education. However, with cuts in school budgets occurring over many years, it will take some time to fully reinstate visual and performing arts curriculum back into the schools, especially in schools that are servicing low-income students. Often these schools barely have supplies for textbooks to provide basic education. Now, research has shown that students who are exposed to live theater are more likely to enhance their vocabulary, be more tolerant of their fellow man, and be more sensitive to what a fellow student might be experiencing. The return of live theater performances to major networks is introducing young minds to the theater in the form of a staged musical play. NBC started the return of live musicals to television by showing The Sound of Music live, December 2013, Peter Pan live, December 2014, and then The Wiz live, December 2015. All musicals drew large audiences and was viewed by a variety of age groups. The Wiz alone was seen by over 18.32 million viewers. It was the most tweeted live sessional performance ever. Fox jumped on the wagon and recently broadcasted a new version of Grease in January 2016. Students involved in performance art improved with reading comprehension, maintain better attendance records, and generally stay more engaged in school than students who have no exposure to performance art. For low-income students who have participated in performance arts, their self-esteem is much higher. So, one solution to supplement what LAUSD is doing to increase students' exposure to the arts is to bring arts education to the students. A touring theater company would be an excellent route in exposing young minds to the wonders of theater. Marymount California University could provide assistance to LAUSD schools who cater to students from low-income households by creating an MCU Mariners Traveling Troupe. This troupe would bring arts education to the elementary, social, and the secondary schools as an outsourced program. The formation of the MCU traveling troupe strongly supports one of MCU core values, which is service to the community. The troupe's mission would be to create an extraordinary theater experience that educates, challenges, and inspires young people and their communities. The troupe would be overseen by an artistic director, and the artistic director could be a faculty or staff member housed in the theater or media studies program. Other positions needed for the troupe would be company manager, business manager, development coordinator, public relations, and troupe liaison. These positions would support the artistic director, and current students could fulfill any of these positions, but they would have to accept an internship in order to fulfill the task. Troupe members would be comprised of any students who want to join, but specifically students majoring in theater, music, media arts, and business will be sought out. Student troupe members would be required to sign up for a course specifically used for troupe participation. Other members of the troupe could also include faculty, staff, alumni, and community members. Troupe members would be expected to either perform in the show and or provide technical support for each play production at each participating school. The troupe will visit an elementary school in the LA Unified School District in low-income areas throughout the academic year, specifically because many of these students typically do not have exposure to the creative arts. The troupe will take residence and select a school for a few weeks, offer students the opportunity to participate in theater production. During the performances, the theater company will consist of a handful of its own troupe members that will serve as the actors, but students from the specific participating school will also be invited to join into the production to round out the cast. At the end of the season, the students from various schools that participate throughout the season will be invited to watch a professional production of the same play that was presented at their school. By being a member of the Mariners Traveling Group, students will have the opportunity to practice their craft, bring the arts to students in a live format, and fulfill MCU's mission to pursue lives of leadership and service. The research presented has shown that returning arts education to the elementary and secondary schools curriculum will only enhance the students' success in school. LA Unified School District schools have begun the process of reinstating their arts education into the curriculum, but the Mariners Traveling Troupe would augment the exposure to the arts by presenting plays that would offer the low-income and underrepresented students the opportunity to fully participate in a theatrical experience. Now, initially, I thought my research topic would become across as frivolous and not important, but I was very pleased to discover that visual and performing arts in school is an important topic of discussion and being considered by many organizations that advocate for the arts. As a shy kid who found the theater at a young age, I can't begin to express what a confidence builder being involved in performing arts can be. When I see a theatrical performance, whether on TV such as productions like The Wiz or Grease, or stage productions such as Wicked at the Pantages Theater or Cinderella at the Omniscient Theater, I literally get goosebumps. I love the theater, and I'm truly excited when I have an opportunity to escape to another place for a few hours. What a contribution it would be to local communities to give young students in low-income areas the same exposure and opportunity. I would like to conclude my presentation by quoting one of my favorite people, Walt Disney. All our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. So I will try to continue to pursue the idea of Mariners Traveling Troupe. Thank you for your time today. That concludes my presentation. I guess I have to ask for questions.
Loretta, this is very exciting.
Oh, thank you.
When are you going to start?
Well, I have to do just a little bit more research.
Right. Have you at all kind of looked at the practicalities? How did you get funding, all that kind of thing?
I have, and that's one reason why I'd like it to be housed at the university, because there's your automatic umbrella right there. It doesn't take a lot to start it. Hopefully, if it's absorbed into, since we don't actually have a theater department, we have a theater program, it probably has to be housed under media studies. There are lots of grants that are out there, and that's why we need a development coordinator, and I would hope that student and or staff, faculty member would work closely with our development office at MCU. They've already laid the groundwork for obtaining some funding. And then there's local theaters that we might be able to talk to about getting some funding. Because I'm hoping that if it ever happened, we actually could do some paid internships as well. Yes, ma'am.
Did you, I imagine you spoke to Blue Wave and Greg Lavonian and people in the arts. Are they on board? Do they have suggestions for how?
You know, I didn't talk to them.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I didn't. I thought about doing it towards the end, but then I got a little scared. It's like, I don't want them to discourage me possibly.
It's great.
So when they say you do something and you apologize later.
I love the way you have the solid research background of the arts and everything from No Child Left Behind to the Sex Act and whatnot. Because in order to get any sort of grant for anything like this, you have to have that solid research. And as I was watching it, it just really solidified again, all four of my children are so fortunate they went to a visual and performing art magnet in LAUSD from kindergarten through 6th grade.
Wow.
Then their junior high, and so they had music. One of my sons had tap dancing in 2nd grade. They had speech. They had performance behind the scenes, in front of the curtains. And then their big performance was at Cal State Woods Hills. They had a visit, back then they had a visiting arts teacher for an entire semester that worked with all grades. And so when you talk about incorporating it with the curriculum, that's what they would do. You know, every aspect of the curriculum was wrapped around the arts.
And it sounds like they had the experience of the traveling art teacher.
And they did, but another dear friend of mine was a traveling music teacher with LAUSD with our local schools, not the magnet, because we had our own, but their local schools, and every day she'd be at a different school, and there was a traveling art teacher. But one of the challenges that you alluded to is getting the classroom teachers. Yeah, they want someone to take their kids and entertain them for a
Right.
But then they weren't following through in the classroom to make that true connection.
Exactly. And that's when, obviously, since I have the interest in theater, I would want it to be more than just an hour. You know, you want to fully immerse them. You have to come back a few times in that semester so they get a chance to experience it. What I thought was fun is after The Wiz was broadcasted, I live in the neighborhood that I grew up in. And the elementary school in my neighborhood decided to do songs from The Wiz for Black History Month. And they posted some scenes of it on Facebook. And it was just such a joy to me to see these little kids with their mic and they're singing the songs. And I know that a lot of it had to do with the fact that they saw it on TV and they decided to do it.
That's really cool. And then having the principal on board at whatever school you go to
Exactly.
is absolutely vital.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So that the field trip isn't scheduled the same day you're supposed to be there for a rehearsal.
Exactly.
Which happens.
Oh, right.
I think this is great. I think LAUSD is trying to, they remove the arts.
And that was the biggest surprise for me when I was researching this, because I'm a baby boomer, and when I went to elementary school, I mean, the arts was a very a vital part of school, so I was very surprised, but then after researching the legislation, it was like, okay, now I see why it's not being done.
I don't need to overtalk, but what's also happening in these communities at our church right here on 7th Street, we rent a whole downstairs space now to a community troupe for children who aren't getting arts in school. And so 2 people have started an arts program and they rehearse there, I don't know how many times a week after school. So it also combines arts in children's lives with after school daycare to a certain extent too for elementary.
And it kind of raises another question. Do you know anything about how LAUSD used to using sort of outside vendors for things? Do you know?
Not from the research I was doing. I did do some anecdotal questioning of people that I know that teach with LA Unified. And it doesn't seem like they're actively pursuing this, even though according to all the information they publicize, they're working on this. But a lot of the people that are at the schools are not fully experienced and they're still dealing with traveling Like, the same time with art teachers, but they are doing more than just art. They are doing music and theater as well.
Good morning, everyone. So my presentation is on successful policing, and my project will highlight key factors that might contribute to the strength of relationship between law enforcement and the community they serve. So these are key points that I believe played a big part into adding to the strength. So I'll talk about the media and how they mold a public perception, the importance of community policing, higher education, and if that makes for a better police officer, and citizen complaints, and the importance of proper sanctions after cases of misconduct. And towards the end, I'll talk about how police departments are taking steps towards a brighter tomorrow, a brighter future, where the relationship between the community and law enforcement can be harmonious. So why is this topic important? I picked this topic for many reasons, but Gallup poll shows that American confidence in the police is at its lowest that it's been in 22 years. There's a combined 18% that have very little to none confidence in the police, which is very shocking. So I wanted to know what events triggered or might have led to this little confidence in the police. So for example, big publicized events like the incident in Ferguson, Missouri, or Staten Island, New York. So aside from that, I believe that this topic is important to research because there's men and women who go to work every day and wholeheartedly and genuinely protect and serve the community. So they often get the short end of the stick because they have this negative view by the public that they serve. So I believe that looking into this strain between the relationship between cops and the public is important for them and for the future. So I want to talk about media and how it affects public perception. There were studies showed and done that showed that most Americans today, they get their knowledge of what the police and what the police are supposed to do from shows like Law & Order and other popular crime shows. And they think that this, what they see on TV, is what is the behavior that they're supposed to see from law enforcement in real life. So for example, so in a show like this one, police officer shows up to the scene, he sees the scene, he apprehends the criminal in 10 minutes, he books him in the other 10 minutes, there's a trial in the next 20 minutes, so in 60 minutes, their whole case is solved. So when the public goes in and experiences in real life and it doesn't happen in 60 minutes, there's some sort of conflicting feelings in them. So the study showed that this is what's happening between the media and the formation of the perception of the public is causing dissatisfaction of the police. So especially when they go and they look at the news and they see all these cases of misconduct and their views of heroes in uniform are often destroyed. So this actually affects the criminal justice system as a whole. And it actually affects other branches, like the judicial branches of the criminal justice system, such as the courts. So I looked into what is called the CSI effect. This is a phenomenon that's happening with society that their line is blurred between fiction and reality when it comes to forensic science and forensic evidence. So basically what they see on shows like CSI, they think that this is how police work is done. So there was a study that a judge performed. He surveyed 1,000 jurors, and these jurors showed that they were acquitting obvious guilty criminals of their crimes because the prosecution failed to provide forensic evidence that they have seen on popular media like CSI. And they were letting these criminals go, basically. They were saying that they're not guilty because the prosecution didn't show what they saw in CSI, basically. So this effect has gone to the point where the FBI and other police agencies have instructional training videos or other conferences to like brainstorm how to avoid this effect into misguiding society into what is and what's not. So public perception isn't only what they see on the media, it's also what they see, what they experience directly. So I want to talk about the importance of community policing. So basically, community policing is a philosophy done by police departments and how they create partnerships through the community. So they work with the community, they brainstorm, they problem solve in order to form strategies to better strengthen these community relations with the police. So there was a study done that I thought was really relevant to this research that kind of showed how important this philosophy is. This philosophy, unfortunately, is often not used by police departments. It's often looked as a fad, a public relations fad, and it's pushed back into the back burner because it's not considered actual police work. It's considered more of something to do for example, like something to do if there's spare time after crime writing. This research was done in a 14-week training period, followed by an evaluation. So the research was trainees who were getting trained in their police department. The police department said that they were practitioners of the community policing philosophy, which means that after the candidate or trainee graduates from the program, they're placed in a geographical location where they're placed for 1 year in order to build these communities' relationships. And but the study showed that their FTOs, field training officers, were primarily focusing on aspects of traditional policing instead of highlighting community policing skills. Those are very different. So traditional policing skills might be how to properly use a radio, how to properly know exactly where you are, how to properly defend yourself. And community policing skills are more based on communication skills, diversity skills. So the program didn't really lead up to its expectations. And what happened in this study is actually very common, like I said. So this ideal philosophy isn't being used in police departments because there's actually even a subculture of police officers, mostly, unfortunately, field training officers, which are officers that train new officers that go into the streets, that they believe that this is an actual police work, like I said, that this is an actual component of what it means to be a police officer. So this is unfortunately uncommon. So I was talking about the policing side of community policing, but there's actually another side, the community side. So it goes 50-50. So in order to have successful policing, it has to be done from both the police side and the community side. So the communities are often struggle with trust in the police, so they often don't speak up. They don't take the time to put their best foot forward in order to build these community partnerships with the police. And studies showed that sometimes in communities, only minorities speak. So these minorities aren't a true, accurate reflection of the whole community. So it's weak on both sides. So it's important for the community to play a part in this philosophy in order for it to work. I also researched higher education and how higher education makes, if it makes for better police officers. Research showed yes and no. If you go to college and get a degree, it's not going to make you a good police officer. But studies showed that going to college does overall make for better performance on the job. So there's greater advancement opportunities as well if you do have a college degree. if you're on the field. You're able to promote faster. College graduates on the job also have better understanding of human behavior and improved communication skills, orally and writing. And actually, research showed that college graduates, officers, are less likely to use force as a first response. So they're more likely to use other methods in order to defuse the situation instead of acting on force, which often leads them into trouble. Talking about trouble and policing, citizen complaints play a big part in forming a good relationship between the public and the police. Citizen complaints aren't heard, and sometimes these citizen complaints are a precursor to police officers who are often going to act in cases of misconduct in terms of excessive force or other misconduct. And research showed that officers are sometimes desensitized to situations. They're on shift for many hours and they're faced with situations that are similar. So every time they go to one, they just had a similar situation, let's say 30 minutes ago. They're going to be desensitized and make the person that they're serving feel like they're not being heard 100%. So these complaints play a big part in this relationship. And like I said before, officers with high complaints or high complaint histories are more ready to act on excessive force or discourtesy. This part of my research, I had a little, I struggled with because most of the articles and studies I did read, the authors did admit that further investigation was needed in the correlation between citizen complaints and how they tie into excessive force or discourteous actions in behalf of police officers. But I actually found out that misconduct goes beyond the police officer. It goes beyond into police administration. So it goes into the department. So there's often in-house handling of misconduct. For example, if something happens and there's a possible case of misconduct, the police department might just sweep it under the rug in order to not cause such bad media attention to the department. But what this does is that they fail to see that if they don't have and enforce these proper sanctions, this officer is going to go back into the streets and possibly commit another instance of misconduct. So the cycle keeps repeating, just all in hopes of not tarnishing the reputation of the police department. All in all, for something to be successful, it's important to look at its flaws first in order to build a plan for a brighter or for a better future. Police departments are doing this. For example, LA County Sheriff's does promote this program called COPS. It's a program derived from the U.S. Department of Justice. So this program works with families, schools, and communities, and builds programs to better foster a sense of community between law enforcement and the neighborhood. Aside from that, police departments do recognize that college helps make a better police officer in certain ways and promote college reimbursement programs while they're on the job. They also do partnerships with colleges where you can go into this certain college at a low cost or no cost at all. And they also offer financial aid in order to get your degree. And most police departments now don't require a higher education in order to be a candidate, but most of them slowly but surely are adapting to require some kind of coursework or units in order to be for you to be able to apply. What I also found interesting, body cams are also being implemented in most police departments. Los Angeles Police Department took about a $1 million investment from their mayor to buy these body cameras. Even though $1 million was able to only buy 700 body cameras, even though LAPD has 9,000 sworn officers, I thought it was at least a stride in this what they're doing in order to promote more public trust. These body cams are important because it promotes accountability on behalf of the officer, but also promotes accountability on behalf of the citizen, because sometimes it's often dishonesty comes from both sides. So that's the end of my presentation.
Your career goal is to go into law enforcement. Did this presentation does it make you want to try to improve community perceptions, or do you have more of a focus now on that, or is this just something you're interested in?
It does. I mean, police departments are very big, and there's only so much one person can do, but I believe that people should always lead by example. And if one person goes, and like I said, there's many other people that go into the job, and they are performing to their set expectations, ethical expectations. I think that this project kind of made me see that clearer, and it also made me see that there's more research to be done in like relationships between the public and police.
Was there anything that surprised you in the course of your research? Did you discover something that you didn't expect that?
Well, I thought I was going to see more negative feedback on law enforcement, because, but not nowadays, just from personal experience, I see not a lot of people have positive things to say about law enforcement, so I was expecting a negative view, but even though police confidence is at its lowest that it's been in a long time, there's still a lot of people showed that they still have that trust. So, and also I learned that this idea can change. So their idea can be molded. It can't just stay in a negative view. So it could grow. So there could be room for change to improve in the future.
I also suspect that you find that attitudes towards police differ from neighbourhood to neighbourhood depending on socioeconomic status and all that kind of thing. Did you find any sort of differentiation along those lines?
Yes, I did. When it came to community policing, I talked about how there's minorities that step up to build these partnerships. It's usually the people that do speak up and go and try to make these partnership works are usually don't fall in the low range of socioeconomic class or anything like that. So I did see some like discrepancies, like usually Hispanics and poor areas were often to be the less trustful and the less inclined to make these approaches for the police. So I did see that in my research. Yes.
Because I was thinking way back to my early years when I was young, and I know there were people who had a very great mistrust of the police, but so I really wonder whether that's ever changed or ever will change. You always have under the certain socioeconomic classes will be mistrustful of the police because they don't feel fully integrated into society or something like that.
Well, it went back to the police too. So if they don't see any effort coming from those communities that aren't speaking out, they aren't going to put any effort into them either. So that further causes that strained relationship. So I feel like if police departments were to target those areas even more and let's say like go in there with a more forceful aspect in terms of improving the relationship, I feel that would be helpful.